Young gobbos these days, all they do is bang around on their war drums. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned generic goblin noise?
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further, as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. Or if you're in Canada like me, you can use the same promo code at Multizone to get 10% off your orders of singles. If cards aren't what you're looking for, Original Magic Art has playmats, tokens, and sweet art that you can use that same promo code to help you get 5% off your order there. If you're looking to bling out your cards, using Alter Sleeves is a great way to do so, and you can click the affiliate link in my About section to help out the channel as you make an order. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game finds us back at Kessel Run, and I'm playing Krenko. I keep Pyre of Heroes, Mindstone, Snow-Covered Mountain, Cavern of Souls, Goblin Welder, and a Goblin Warchief. Raph is back playing Marisi, and he keeps Oblation, Sungrass Prairie, Snow-Covered Mountain, Snow-Covered Plains, Pendlehaven, Harmonize, and a Rampant Growth. Brody has also returned, playing Neyith this time, and he keeps Tangarth, War's Toll, Return to Nature, Gruul Locket, and 2 mountains. New to the channel is Maggie, playing Admiral Beckett Brass, and she keeps 2 islands, a swamp, Curse of Opulence, Treasure Chest, Merchant Raiders, and a Stormfleet Aerialist. Maggie wins the die roll and starts us off. She plays an island and passes to me. I play Cavern of Souls, naming goblins, which is pretty obvious, and cast a Goblin Welder. Raph plays a Pendlehaven and taps it for 1 to cast a Wayfarer's Bauble. Brody just plays a mountain. Maggie plays an Access Tunnel for a land, and then casts a Stormfleet Aerialist. I play a Snow-Covered Mountain, and tap 2 to cast a Mind Stone, passing. Raph plays a Snow-Covered Plains, and just casts a Fairy Godmother. Brody plays a mountain, passing. Maggie plays a swamp for turn, and then casts a treasure chest. She moves to combat, and I take 1. I draw, but don't have a land to play. At least I have enough to cast a Goblin Warchief, which does reduce goblins by 1 and gives them haste thankfully. I then pass to Raph. Raph plays a Snow-Covered Mountain, and drops a Serra Ascendant, which frankly no one wants to see. For Brody's turn, he plays a Forest, and taps enough to cast a Gruul Locket. The Locket is then tapped to cast Ulvenwald Tracker, and he passes back to Maggie. Maggie activates her treasure chest in her main phase, rolling one of the biggest T20s I've ever seen. She manages to hit a 20, which lets her tutor for an artifact and put it onto the battlefield. She finds a Door of Destiny, naming Pirates, which seems pretty good for a tribal deck. She then goes to combat and hits me for 1. My turn has me playing a Snow-Covered Mountain, and I cast Krenko in my main phase. I then pass. At the end of turn, Raphael cracks his bauble to go and find a land. Raph plays a Mossfire Valley, and he casts a Rampant Growth. He goes and grabs a Snow-Covered Mountain. Moving to combat, he swings at Maggie by attacking her for 6 with the Serra Ascendant. He gains 6 life, and then passes turn. Brody's turn has him casting a Frontier Siege and naming Khans as it enters. He moves to his second main phase, getting the mana, but doesn't do anything with it, and passes to Maggie. Maggie finds a red mana finally, and she plays a Merchant Raiders, which as it enters, taps down the Serra Ascendant. This also takes up the Door of Destiny. She then puts the Curse of Opulence onto me, and attacks me with the Aerialist, getting a gold token. She then passes, and at the end of turn, I tap Krenko for 3 Goblin tokens. My main phase has me casting a Shared Animosity, and I tap Krenko for 6 more Goblin tokens. I then move to the beginning of combat, and Raphael targets Shared Animosity with Oblation. I shuffle it in and get to draw 2 cards in return, which doesn't feel like a great deal for me. I then move to combat, and swing at Maggie for 9. She blocks one of the tokens and takes 8. Raph untaps and casts his commander in his main phase. He moves to combat going at me and getting a gold token, and then goads me. In his second main phase, he sacrifices the gold and taps some mana to cast Harmonize to draw some cards. Brody untaps, getting 2 mana from his siege trigger in his main phase, and uses it and some lands to cast Tangarth. He then passes through his phases, getting 2 more green mana in his second main phase, and he has Tangarth fighting Krenko with the Ulvenwald Tracker's ability, and I guess this is kinda fair since I'd almost killed everyone with goblin tokens last turn. Maggie untaps and plays another island. She casts Admiral Beckett Brass in her main phase, and gets another counter on the Door of Destiny, and also triggers the Merchant Raiders, tapping down my Goblin Warchief on my side of the board. She then moves to combat, swinging at me for 4. This once more gets Maggie another gold token, and she then taps blue, blue, and a gold to cast a Protean Raider, having it come in as a copy of the Merchant Raider, and freezes down another 2 creatures this time, targeting Tangarth and the Goblin Welder. In response, I use the Welder's effect, and I force Maggie to sacrifice the Door of Destiny for the treasure chest in her graveyard. With nothing else, they get tapped down, and Maggie passes. I cast Krenko's command, and follow up with a Dragon Fodder, making a total of 4 Goblin tokens. I then move to combat, swinging the 4 tokens at Raph, and 8 of them at Maggie, because the new ones aren't goated, and the old ones are. Raph blocks 1 and takes 3, while Maggie blocks 3 and takes 5. Raph untaps and plays a Llanowar Elves in his main phase. He then drops a Hope of Girapur, and it seems as though the power and toughness of most of his deck is a 1/1. He then casts a Traveler's Amulet for good measure, and moves to combat, attacking Maggie for 1. This goads all of Maggie's current creatures. Brody untaps, and immediately uses the Siege mana to have Tangarth fight Admiral Beckett Brass using the Ulvenwald Tracker. He then taps 4 mana to cast Hans Eriksson, aka Saffron Olive, and passes to Maggie. Maggie untaps and uses her gold and 2 more blue to sacrifice the treasure chest, but this time rolls a 4. She does get to make 5 treasures as a result though, which is pretty good. She then recasts Admiral Beckett Brass, and as it comes in, and taps down 2 creatures thanks to the Merchant Raider triggers. She picks Ulvenwald Tracker and Hans, and they go to sleep for a little while. Moving to combat, she still has to attack with the creatures that she can, and the goated ones go at Brody. Maggie then passes, and at the beginning of her end step, she gets an Admiral Beckett Brass trigger, and is able to steal Brody's Frontier Siege because 3 of her pirates connected with him this turn. I draw for turn, and in my main phase cast Pashalik Mons and Grenzo Havoc Razor, and then move to combat. I attack Maggie with 9 Goblin tokens, 1 of which gets blocked while 8 connect. With the Goblin token dying, I ping Raph for 1 thanks to Mons, and then have Maggie exile her top 8 cards of her deck. Unfortunately, I don't have any mana to cast them, so I pass. At the end of turn, Raph sacrifices the amulet to go and find a snow-covered forest. Raph untaps and moves straight to combat. He swings 1 creature apiece at Maggie and I, and we both take the hit for 1, and our creatures are goated. Brody untaps and immediately chooses Violence, tapping 1 red to cast a Lightning Bolt, and blasts Admiral Beckett Brass back into the command zone. He then casts Pounce to have Tangarth fight once again, and takes out the cloned copy of the Merchant. With nothing else, he passes turn. Maggie untaps, and with the treasures and the stolen Frontier Siege, makes enough mana to cast a Contract Killing, destroying Grenzo and recouping 2 treasure tokens. With Grenzo dying, I have Basilic Mons deal 1 to Raph. For a blue and some of that newly found treasure, she then plays a Pirate's Prize, drawing 2, and making another treasure token. She then uses all of her remaining mana to spice up the game, and plays out an Emberwild Captain, becoming the Monarch. She gets another Merchant trigger, tapping down Peshalik Mons, and moves to combat since she's goated, sending the Stormfleet in the air for 1 at Brody, and the Merchant goes at me for 2. She gets a gold token from attacking me, and passes, drawing at the end of turn from being the Monarch. I untap, and in my main phase, cast Pyre of Heroes. I then immediately sacrifice one of my sleepy goblins, losing Mons, and getting to ping Raph for 1. This lets me go and find a 4-drop, and I grab a Goblin Trashmaster. This pumps all of my Goblin tokens by +1/+1, and I move to combat. I have to swing, plus that's what Goblins want to do anyway, and I go all out at Maggie. Maggie's Emberwild Captain triggers, and I take 3 from attacking her, but she gets taken out. I also swing the Trashmaster at Brody, dealing 3, because, you know. I then pass to Raph. Raph untaps and draws, moving to combat. He swings 7 points worth of damage at me, and 1 at Brody, goading us and then passing turn. Brody untaps and casts better Neyith than never, bringing his commander out and going to combat. He swings all out at me, with hands triggering and putting a mountain into Brody's hand, and I take 6. Brody then plays said mountain and passes, and it's at this point we realize that Raph is the monarch. I untap and recast Krenko. Before moving to combat, I activate Krenko to make some Goblin tokens, which can swing at whoever I want since they aren't goaded. I have to swing at Brody at this point, who blocks the Welder and the Trashmaster to kill them. Raph untaps and puts out a Crown of Doom in his main phase. He then pays the cost to activate it and donates it to me. He moves to combat, swinging the Sarah Ascendant at me, dealing 8 and gaining him 8 life, and he swings 2 points of damage worth at Brody. Once more, all of our creatures are goaded, and he passes to Brody. Brody untaps, and in his main phase, casts Blood Sun, drawing a card as it enters, and removing all non-mana abilities from lands, which at this point only hoses the Pendelhaven. He then activates the Ulvenwald Tracker, and has Tangarth fighting Marisi, but Raph responds before the ability can resolve, and casts an Unbreakable Formation, giving it indestructible. Tangarth is unfortunately taken out though, and he moves to his goaded combat step. He swings what he can at me, and hands triggers, getting Brody a forest. I block with 2 tokens, triggering Neyith and drawing Brody a card. With nothing else, he passes. For my turn, I play a Heraldic Banner in my main phase. I name red as it enters, and then activate the Pyre of Heroes, sacrificing a token and going to find a Skirk Prospector to put to field. I then sacrifice 2 more tokens for 2 red mana to help play Metallic Mimic. I then sacrifice 2 more tokens and cast an Illusionist Bracers. I equip Krenko with the Bracers, which allows me to activate Krenko and get 2 of his triggers. This has me making 11 Goblin tokens and then another 22 on top of that. They're all 3/2s with haste, and to make matters worse, I then kick a Goblin Bushwhacker, pumping them by a further +1/+0. These new tokens are free to swing at Raph if I want them to, and with enough damage on the board to take out both of my opponents, they both scoop it up as they realize I've got it in the bag. Game review time. So Goblin's gonna gob. Krenko gets another win, and I got to actually showcase a few of the new cards in the deck, and by a few, I mean the Pyre of Heroes. Having a Birthing Pod in Goblins is phenomenal. Even though I had to have the right converted mana cost to go and find what I needed, it seemed like such an easy inclusion in a tribal deck. Raph's deck afterwards became very apparent that he was only running 1/1s, and the plan was that he'd poke someone and force them to attack someone else. It was kind of like a misdirection deck, and I thought that was pretty cute. Maggie's Admiral Beckett Brass played a lot of commons and uncommons, but it was still very strong. I was particularly interested in that Merchant Raiders, and it was pretty incredible to see how many creatures she kept tapped down, especially once she got that clone out. She even got to live the dream of stealing something with Admiral Beckett Brass, not to mention rolling that 20 on the treasure chest. Brody's fight deck unfortunately didn't do as much as I think he wanted it to, but I will say that he seems to run a lot of fun cards, and I'm glad I got to see Hans Eriksson in action. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.